Welcome to I Could Never, a show all about non-monogamy and the many ways it can look. I, as always, am Genevieve from Chill Polyamory on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
And I am always, as always, am Ishik, and I cut in just the way I do every time.
Very smooth, my love. We are not in our normal, you might notice that we don't have a guest here. This is going to be part 2 of our question and answer mid-season episodes. We got a lot of questions. We're so happy for the interest and the curiosity, and we will answer your questions to the best of our ability based off of I'm 13 years polyamorous, you're about the same. So take what lands. He might be a little bit more experienced than me. Take what lands, take what applies to you, and leave the rest. It might be for somebody else, but hopefully something we say today can be helpful.
Yeah. As we say in AA, take the coffee, leave the grinds.
Yeah.
So. But
you have something to introduce. You get upset when I try to introduce it.
Know.
We have an icebreaker. Break that ice, baby.
So there's a train going one direction at 70 miles per hour,
okay,
and then another train going in another direction at 50 miles per hour.
Okay.
How long would it take before the two had to start vibing or venting? Solve for X.
I know math.
Solve for X.
Vibe or vent. If you are new here, we like to start every episode with a vibe or vent where we each go around and we talk about something that we're happy about this week that we want to vibe about, or something that we want to vent about and get off our chest. So, shall I start? Am I vibing or venting? Do you want to guess?
You shall start. And you are doing one of those two things.
I'm vibing today. Last week, I spontaneously had somebody from like my past re-enter. So about like 10 or 12 years ago, I went on a date with a mutual friend that I met at like some pool party or something. Objectively like attractive person, but there were just no like sparks for me. I'm kind of on the ace spectrum. So like it takes a while for me to, or it has to be like a very specific scenario before I feel like interested. So that date never went anywhere, but seemed like a nice person, stayed mutuals on Instagram or whatever. 10 or 12 years later, says, hey, I'm in Berlin. Do you want to hang out? And it's nice. And to my surprise, I was like, oh, there's sparks this time. That's cool. So had a really nice night with like a new friends with benefits. He jetted off to Greece the next day, right? And so yet another long distance connection.
You're really great at
I'm
those.
really good at not finding people locally. But yeah, it's just been really like fun and playful and light and sweet. And I also love my life because I can talk about it in front of you and you're smiling and you're like high-fiving me, right? So anyway, I'm vibing about that because sometimes, I guess especially I'm vibing with my willingness to be spontaneous, right? I'm feeling like I'm in a season where I'm welcoming more into my life. I'm open to more things. I'm feeling more relaxed. I'm sharing more publicly, and new people are walking into my life all summer and now into the autumn. So it's feeling good. It's feeling good after some seasons of tightness or, more introversion. So I'm vibing today. How are you doing, baby? Are you vibing or are you venting?
I'm going the other direction. I'm venting. Okay. My vibe last episode was about the latter half of my trip to the U.S., and this will be about the former half of my trip to the U.S., which was not great. And the long and the short of it is family drama, family conflict. And, as longtime listeners probably know, my mom does listen to the podcast, so I'll have some. Hey, Mom. So I'll, there's a little bit of some tailoring of this to a certain degree, but, I also am not going to say anything I wouldn't say to her or to my sister with whom I have had conflict this past trip. We got into big fight over the dumbest thing possible. Honestly, I am almost too embarrassed to even admit what it was. It was about a fucking bed. Who gets to sleep in what bed in a house? It was
about who was in charge.
It was about who was in charge. It's not like this is one thing. It has been years and years and years of backsliding into a person who just does not take any personal accountability, has no desire to actually be thoughtful or mindful about anyone else around them, and continues to mine a victim narrative while being a monster to everyone around them. Like, literally screaming at me about how she was going to call the police and try to get me arrested in front of her children. Like, it's
so violent to threaten to call the police, especially in the US. Like,
that it was also nonsense. It was crazy, and like fucking like in public, in front of her children, in front of everyone, like all mad people just screaming over a bed. It's crazy. That's crazy. Anyways, conflict resolution requires two people who want to find peace, right? Two people who want to do work together to mend. And the fact of the matter is that is not what this situation is, right? It requires two parties, and there are not two parties.
There's just like a powerlessness of like, you want to mend, but they don't.
I think it's what's also really frustrating in the powerlessness is like, it was her intention to try to be as cruel and like kind of like verbally violent as possible, threatening, again, with police action, all this stuff, like whatever she could to try to cut me down, mocking me, mocking our work, mocking my life. Not only is there no desire to mend, but there's a desire to harm and to try to be cruel. It doesn't work, because I love my fucking life and our life is fucking sick and this is an awesome job and I'm super proud of what we do and I'm so happy that we can be here for people and whatever. But like, that aside, just the desire to do that kind of harm, to the desire to be cruel to somebody that you're ostensibly supposed to care deeply about, I don't fucking relate. And I also get really frustrated that it's like, why the fuck am I wearing kid gloves and not taking out all the big guns against you, right? Like, I could, but I don't, because like, I don't have a desire to, I mean, one, it wouldn't help. That's, I think, where I'm feeling frustrated is like, I keep banding about this idea of like, should I send a message to like put her in her place? And it's like, honestly, to what end? But it's hard. It's really, really hard. There's only so much that I can like on my part and try to mend things with the other people who are around who are also affected and stuff like that. I want to do that as well. And also, I am not willing to accept the level of the way that she was behaving and the way that I was being treated. And like, that's really tough.
Now that we've set the tone, talking about real shit, highs and the lows, let's get into some questions, everybody. Let's look at what you're dealing with, and we will offer support to the best of our ability. Shall we start? First question. Let's get into it.
Is it a red flag or mistake to date someone who's only been monogamous and is interested in trying it with you, I'm assuming being non-monogamous, for the first time? I seem to get a lot of problems with that, but I don't know if it stems from something deeper, like feigning interest in polyamory because that's the only way they think they can date me. I don't know if you've ever dealt with that. So I think that there is... there's like two ways to approach this. There's the theoretical way and the personal way. Theoretically, there's nothing inherently wrong with dating somebody who's monogamous or who's only ever been monogamous before dating you in a non-monogamous context. Personally, I don't date monogamous people anymore, or people who aren't at least somewhat practiced or interested in genuinely non-monogamy. I have had enough experiences with that where it doesn't go so great, where people say that they're totally fine with it, but when push comes to shove, pretty quickly, the first moment they're actually confronted with, oh, Ishik's really non-monogamous. Yeah, I had people who would be interested and they would say they were fine and they weren't. So that's now my kind of blanket rule for myself. But again, there is nothing wrong with dating somebody who has not had experience in non-monogamy or who is even monogamous. That's totally fine. Move forward with your eyes open and like don't turn a blind eye to potential pieces of information that are saying that this person actually isn't okay with this, right? That's difficult to navigate because somebody's discomfort, right? Like, we've been together in non-monogamous our entire relationship for 11 years, right? 12 years?
11 this year, yeah.
Yeah, 11 years. And discomfort can still happen, even in that dynamic, right? So somebody's discomfort doesn't necessarily mean they're not okay with non-monogamy, but just assessing it.
Are they interested in, so even monogamous people, like people ask me a lot of times about monopolyam, if somebody only wants one partner, how does that work? Everybody involved, in my opinion, needs to be working on challenging mononormativity and challenging like, oh, the romance myth, or, you know, what do I think love looks like? What do I think security looks like? What messages have I been told? Everybody needs to, we're not just adding other partners, we are radically changing how we view relationships if we want to have a good time, right? A lot of times people will white knuckle it and hang on to hopes that sort of model what they've always been told, or they don't really want to dig into those hard questions because they bring up a lot of feelings, and they do, you know, but like it's really important that everybody is curious and challenging the norms. And if they are interested in challenging the norms, if they are interested in saying, why do we do it like that? Says who, you know, like then I feel more optimistic. And I would much rather be with someone who is newer and hungry for information and curious and proactively working, proactively talking, than somebody who's been doing this for a decade and has really bad habits and is like, you know, thinks they know everything, you know? So I don't think newness on its own is a red flag. Look at the context all around it. And what are your green flags? What do you see in a person where you're like, oh, they're actually, you know, interested in changing. They're actually interested in handling conflict well. How do they handle rejection? What do they think, you know, love looks like? You know, what do they imagine in the future for themselves? Like all of these things can be helpful to just sort of get to know about a person.
Yeah, what does communication and conflict look like? I think is another big one.
Yeah. And so, you know, I think it can be riskier to date someone who is brand new and unsure, because if they say they're unsure, believe them, they might not want to stick around, you know? And, you know, we were talking to Reese, and Reese was saying that he just kind of opened up, my other partner, he just kind of opened up, and for like a decade has been doing work and thinking about it and talking about it, and so the work isn't just starting. And so even though being open is newer, it doesn't feel like I'm dating someone brand new to it, right? So the work of, you know, like consuming information and questioning everything we've known to be true. And maybe after all of the questioning, they still land on, I'm monogamous. And that's great, because freely chosen monogamy is very different than just going with the motions and having compulsory monogamy, right? And so, yeah, I think that's all of the other stuff that they do. Pay attention to that and ask yourself, is that, you know, a red flag for you?
And I'll also add, if somebody came to me with the way that my life looks now, I live with a partner who I've been with for years. I have other partners, both romantic, sexual, platonic, etc. And they have been monogamous their entire life. And they saw all of that with clear eyes and said, no, I want to date you.
Yeah.
I'm going to take them at their word, right? Because they have all of the information in front of them that like, this is very much the way it is. And if they're saying they want to date me at that point, okay, then you're clearly down. And I think the degree to which you have control over your own kind of way that you're presenting yourself and your life, the degree to which it's clear that this is 100% happening for you, the more that person knows. And I think, kind of going back to my earlier examples, when I was newer, when I was younger, I didn't have as many of these very clear markers, and I didn't know how to communicate them, my desires and the way that I love, in a way that wasn't as theoretical, right? Because I think oftentimes somebody who is still engaging in mononormativity, when presented with a theoretical argument about like, this is how people can love, or this is whatever, they can engage with that on an intellectual level. This happened one time. I was slated to go on a first date with somebody. The night before, I'd gone out with some friends, and I had met somebody and I'd hooked up with them. And so I wanted to be super clear and direct, and like, I didn't necessarily have to do this, but I was just like, oh, by the way, like, just so that I don't like the idea of feeling like I'm hiding something. I did go out with somebody last night and, we did hook up. Just wanted to let you know. And that freaked them the fuck out. And it totally fucked up the date. And it was a pretty miserable time after that. The difference there being, I had talked extensively when we had first connected. I talked extensively about non-monogamy, about all of it from a kind of theoretical place. And I think that they had kind of experienced that and interpreted it as like, I'm progressive, I'm interesting, I'm like,
it's an idea.
It's an idea.
Yeah.
Versus, oh no, I had sex with somebody last night.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to be here with you. And I just, this is just me, open, honest communication. Then it was like, wait, but like, you weren't like saving yourself for me now because we're about to start dating. It's like,
that's the thing is like people will love the idea. And then, so I guess if you can kind of root it a little bit more in reality, in anecdote, in what if we did this, or how would you feel if I did that? It doesn't mean that they have to be so relaxed about it, but like, if there are feelings, are they willing to talk about those feelings and work through them? I was seeing somebody for 3 months and was on a video call with them here, and you were in the other room, and I walked by and I was like, oh, hey. And I was like, so I asked the person, I was like, oh, I've talked about Ishik. Do you want to like meet Ishik? And they were like, maybe another time. And I was like, okay, that's no problem. You don't have to. Completely ghosted me after that.
Yeah.
Completely fucking ghosted me after that. And I was like, it got real. It got real. And we'd been talking for months, and I'd been talking about you on my date. Like, I'm very open, but like the presence of other people, yeah, it could be uncomfortable if it's brand new. That's not automatically a quote unquote bad thing. It doesn't mean they can't do it. What do they do next? Are they engaging with that discomfort? Are they like, yeah, I wonder what that is, or I want to feel differently than I do, because we've all done that. We've all been new, at some point and had some discomfort. So what do they do next after feeling uncomfortable? And that can tell you a lot about, what ride you'd be along for, right?
and I think that's when I was saying about like seeing how people react. It's not a matter of like testing them or doing or like being suspicious. My policy is I take people at their word until I have evidence to the alternative. And I'm not seeking that evidence out. I'm not like keeping an intense eye, like when's the shoe gonna drop? But if the evidence presents itself, right? Yeah. If they start fucking ghosting you after a specific thing happens, that's pretty blatant evidence about how their comfort level, right? Yeah. And so I think that's the thing, right? Is I don't mistrust people. I trust them implicitly. I take them at their word when they say things until there's obvious evidence to the otherwise, to the alternative. And then I listen to that. Yeah. So I do want to prioritize the email questions.
Hi, I'm in a long distance scenario that began with the idea of maintaining a casual comment relationship and got more emotional and close over time. Now that things are getting more intimate, I find myself wanting to have more concrete talks and check-ins on occasion. But as our physical time together is short, I don't like the idea of carving out time for potentially tough conversations. Should I just suck it up and schedule it that way? We don't talk on the phone a lot, but theoretically, we could schedule check-ins on the phone. I also don't love the idea of having those check-ins so far apart. What has worked for you?
I'll say kind of recently, I had a situation like this go poorly. And so I was in a similar situation and I was feeling more emotional and close over time with a common partner. And at one point, a conflict happened, and what was supposed to be some very limited time that we were going to have together on a trip when we were in the same place, ended up getting taken over by this conflict, and it was not getting resolved well, and it was going really poorly. So while that's a little different than what you're saying, right? You're just wanting to have more serious talks. It did end up going into a serious talk direction. And inevitably, like what came out for me was how much like that was a priority to me. And like, I wanted to put that work in, and oversimplifying dramatically the reality of what this was, I kind of got the sense that they didn't. And like, that sucks and it hurt. And I'm glad I have that information, right? That is important and valuable. And as much as it sucks to have to be confronted with maybe the realities of the expectations and the desire of the relationship not being aligned, I would take that every time over not knowing. So to this, right, like I understand that fear of wanting to devote the limited time you might have or the limited check-in opportunities to these tougher, kind of more serious conversations. And if that's what you're feeling like you need to find out if they're there too and if they want to do that. Because otherwise, I think that you'll ultimately feel dissatisfied with the relationship. So I'm personally the proponent of taking those leaps will always mean that you are maintaining and building the types of relationships you want to have in your life. And while it's scary, it will always be worth it.
Basically, like, if it's going to be on your mind, the first thing that comes to me is if it's going to be on your mind, like, I need to talk to you about something, but I don't want to be a downer. I don't want to be a buzzkill. Like, then it's going to be in your head, like, while you're trying to have quality time. It's like, it can get in the way. And so if something's trying to get said, it'll come out sideways or you'll act strange or, like, then it needs to be said, right? Sometimes I'll even say that where I'm like, I want to talk to you, but I don't know when, and I want us to have fun. And like, could you even collaborate? Like, and like figure out a time that feels good for both of you, to talk. I think intimate and emotional check-ins don't have to be down, they can feel weighted, but they don't have to be like weighing on you, right? Like sometimes you can feel closer, sometimes you can feel vulnerable, sometimes it can be like kind of soft or awkward or, I realized I feel this way, or I'm nervous this might happen, or what do you think? And then if that does go smoothly, or you do feel held in that, or you do feel like you're getting clarity, then the rest of the trip can feel lighter. That is a positive way that it can go and has gone for me before. In a very practical sense, sometimes I will like have the talks either like in a space that feels separate from activities, right? So like if we're gonna be chilling on the couch watching a movie, I don't want to have that talk on that couch right before the movie, right? Maybe we go for a walk outside in a park, or maybe we like have the talk and then go to dinner and get a new space, new headspace, something that feels like it's got its own spot and it's not just bleeding into what happens next, so you can't like compartmentalize necessarily, but I think location and activity can impact how much you carry it with you for like during your quality time. Regardless of how it goes, it will be real. I think that also ties into what you were saying. Regardless of how it goes, even if it doesn't go the way that you want, you've gotten to something deeply honest. And I think that that's more connective than, trying to keep it light all the time. So, yeah, I get it, but
you got this.
You got this, and yeah, it's doable, and it gets easier.
So this one's kind of interesting. Don't make fun of me. I wrote a contract/living document for my second poly date. Useful?
Aww, that kind of reminds me of Ashton.
It does. Yeah. It does. Yeah. So last season, we had an Ashton Berry, aka the Collectress, and she talked about actually having like a lot more kind of more formal documentation that she uses within her relationships. I think specifically like a survey. Sort of.
The episode was called "Dating the Old-Fashioned Way," as like a wink and a nudge. And of course it was like all consenting, right? She was like, I don't just spring this on people, but sometimes it's nice to literally get on the same page about how you're feeling and what you're thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if it works for you, if that helps you to navigate relationships and people that you are connecting with are down to do it, that's, I mean, in its own way, it is its own filter to if this is a person that you are compatible with, right? Like if that's how you most effectively and easily and most helpfully process and figure out how you want to operate within a relationship, it'll probably behoove you to find people who also want to do that, right? So yeah, maybe a lot of people might not like that or might have some feelings about it or whatever. Either A, maybe once they hear a little bit more about your perspective, then that's great. But also B, then that's very, very useful information that might not be a compatible relationship.
Might not be your type. Yeah.
And that's good to know.
Yeah. Okay, next question. I am brand new to polyamory and your podcast has been better than therapy for me. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I don't know if I can take that on, but I'm glad you like it.
We still support therapy.
Thumbs up. Go to therapy too, but yay. Okay. The way you live your polyamory is goals. Oh, I'm so glad. So my question is, how do I know if solo polyamory versus a more hierarchical situation is right for me? I'm coming from a 22-year marriage, and I'm afraid that wanting a nesting partner, or at least a partial nesting partner, is just leftovers from monogamy. Living solo polyamory feels right, but it's also extremely terrifying. So just off the bat, those aren't your only two options, but I'm hearing that you are still like 22-year marriage, right? You're still like kind of coming out of that, new to polyamory, right? So it sounds like things haven't yet settled, and you might just still be, it might just still be a bit before clarity really sinks in, right?
Something I would just kind of caution in general is like I'm seeing a lot of like terms, right? Solo polyamory, hierarchy, nesting partner. Terms are useful for trying to communicate. They aren't useful for designing our life. Rather than like getting a conception of what a term means and then being like, okay, so how do I build my life? Is that the term that I want to identify me, right? We try to figure out, and which is what I hear you're doing, right? What do I want my life to look like? And then we try to find terms that describe that. So it's the other way around, right? So not using these as the new framework of like the right way to be or the wrong way to be or whatever. It's what do I want? So, right. So going to the actual question here, do you want to live with a person? Like that's an isolated question from terms and even from non-monogamy, right? Like you can be monogamous and want to live alone. And I think also a lot of these things can come out from exploring more, right? I think that if you're coming out of a 22-year marriage, that's prime territory to start trying things.
Yeah.
And figure out a little bit with just messing around.
Yeah, I think my little take on the leftovers from monogamy, I think knowing exactly what you want to build for the rest of your life can be a leftover from monogamy. Because it is this pressure to be like, where is the long-term destination? You know, where are we going with this? Whereas what do I want to try next and learn from? And it doesn't mean we don't then get clear on longer term desires, but it's not a decision we want to make intellectually. And that can also make it feel like less overwhelming and lower the barrier to trying stuff, you know? Because like if I decide, oh, this is what I'm going to do forever, so this is the first step, it puts a lot of pressure on that first step, right? Versus I'm not quite sure, but I think I'd like to do this. Okay, then do it. And then if you hate it, you don't ever have to do it again, right? There's not that pressure that this has to go well because I've already decided this is where I'm going, you know?
I'll speak for myself. I didn't get here because I had a 10-year plan or a 5-year plan or a 1-year plan. I got here because I just kept assessing each step of the way. How do I want to do this? How do I want to do this? Not what are the expectations of how I'm supposed to do this or what it's supposed to look like, but what is it that I want? And then taking a step in that direction. And when something didn't feel right, saying, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And I would like to remove this as a part of how I am in relationships. And then just taking one step after another. And that can be really scary, but it's actually really liberating.
It's freeing.
It's a really liberating experience. And it's, I think, what we are always talking about, why mononormativity doesn't mean that you can't be monogamous, right? Like stepping away from that, I mean. You can still walk down the path of monogamy.
Totally.
You can still walk down the path of nesting with somebody.
Yeah.
But it can be a freely chosen path that we walk because we want it.
I don't know if I've said this on the podcast before, but I have this mantra that I go back to because I don't want to act from urgency. I don't want to act from like anxiety or what I should do is I always go back to like water when still is clear. So I always try to like pursue stillness before actually settling into what I'm going to do. So I don't know if that's helpful for you, is like also if there's this angst and this overthinking and stuff, like can you find like calm, can you find stillness? And then from there, something might become clearer, you know?
Now, of all the times, is to start down a path of joy. Go where the joy is, go where you are happy.
Yeah. Have fun.
Have fun.
Next question. I was wondering if you could give me some general advice on how to process what it is you want when two partners are putting pressure on you. Context is that my one partner broke up with me because I could never make him my priority. My other partner wouldn't process any of her feelings of jealousy and insecurities and did that classic thing of using rules framed around boundaries. I was under a lot of pressure at work, learning to drive, applying to new jobs, etc., and knew a lot of work needed to be done with these partners, but I couldn't even process how I was truly feeling within myself. I broke up with her because of her need to control, but I want to make sure I can avoid this in the future. So I am hearing overwhelm. I am hearing that simplifying your life and not having these commitments is relieving to you. I would sort of gently push back on the framing of some of this. Maybe it was just how it was written, but there is a fair amount of focusing on what they did wrong. And we really, especially like in conflict or in a breakup, I think it's really important to exercise the muscle of like, what's my part in this? What's my role in this? Right. And even in the language we use or like the way that we think about something, owning our part, because otherwise it can be very easy to just be like, oh yeah, they were just so controlling. And then we might actually fall into the same pattern again because we didn't examine our part in that dance, if it's all like, and maybe you are doing that, offline. I'm just going off of what was written here. But yeah, I really think it's important to reflect on, you said the first partner wanted to be a priority, and that was not something you could or wanted to do. So what information is there in that for you of like, what did priority mean? Is that not a type of relationship you want in the future? Can you be clearer with people on what your priorities are and what they can expect of you so that there's not this sort of longing for something that you can't or won't give? The other partner, attempting to like establish rules. Do you want to change how those conversations go? Do you want to inquire further about what their insecurities and anxieties are? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with that completely. We cannot change or control other people, right? Like, I mean, even in what you're saying that you found your partner's desire to control you to not be something you want, we can't control others either, right? We can't control them to not have issues, to not have feelings of jealousy, to not have feelings of insecurity. We can only control ourselves. So to bring it to kind of a bit more of a personal place, a little bit more tangible instead of kind of theoretical, in the past when I was younger, I would often find myself in relationships with people who were kind of struggling and had a lot of issues, and I had a desire to fix them or to help them. Which I think is a pretty common thing for a lot of people, a type of dynamic they'll find themselves in, right? So the issue in those relationships isn't necessarily not that the people I was dating had any number of types of issues that they were struggling with, but the issue that I had control over was my part in it, right? I had an impulse, a desire to be in relationship with people who weren't necessarily trying to do the work to address those issues for themselves, and I was trying to do that work for them, right? And so that, I can change that, right? I can't fix them, I can fix myself. I can't change who they are, I can change who I am. And so in regards to these, things, the way that you're explaining some of the dynamics that you had with these two partners, the premise of the question as it was initially stated is, how to process what it is you want, right? And then the rest of that sentence goes on to when two partners are putting pressure on you. Frankly, I think that first part is the most important thing. I think you need to figure out what you want your relationships to look like and then do the work for yourself. And what that looked like for me was to acknowledge this desire to fix people. And when I was presented with things of that impulse where I would be like, oh, you're struggling with this, like, how can I fix it for you? To say like, I can't fix this for you, right? Like, and like, that was a big thing for me to learn that and to say that. And then if, depending on how that was received, that being a major red flag or a major green flag in terms of the type of relationship. And so like drilling into our own minds about what our red flags are, not of their behavior, but of ours.
You know, for some reason, what's coming to mind is this moment when I was like 16 or 17 and I was late for my after school job and I wanted to go get coffee first, but I was already running late. And I said to the barista, I was like, I need this and I need it as fast as humanly possible. And he looked at me and he was like, it's going to take the time that it takes, right? I didn't make you late. And I never forgot that. And that's what's coming up for me right now because it's such a simple way of saying like, yeah, people can put pressure on you. Do you have to take that on? And it's not to say like, I don't care what your needs are, but to hold a firm line of what is and is not doable, what is and is not possible. And I'm not going to now, you know, hurt myself to ease your distress. So that's what comes to mind for me for that. Yeah. But it sounds like you're doing a lot of reflecting, you know, and I think that that's a great place to be post breakup is doing a lot of, you know, soul searching. Hope that could be helpful. Okay. Next question is from somebody cute that I like. Full disclosure. Okay. What are some common paradigms for disclosure in a poly community? Expanding on that. If we're in a community of poly people, what are some of the common defaults about when, how, if info might be privileged? Obviously, the real answer is talk about it, but it can be a lot of conversations, a lot to keep track of, and a lot of questions you might not even think to ask ahead of time. So are there basically guiding principles that are useful about like information disclosure? So it's a broad question.
Well, I have a really good answer though.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about it.
Hey-o. You know, we helped.
Professionals.
Yeah, like, well, I think the question is like, so if you talk about it, what does talking about it mean, right? Like, what are you actually talking about? So some questions that I would ask, and it's not just sexual information, right? It's like, you know, if you're on a date and somebody's telling you all about their trauma, do you like exclude that when you're telling how your date went, right? Because how would that person feel if somebody they don't know knows what happened to them when they were 5? You know, that's an extreme example, but it can be very easy to fall into, you're with your best friend or you're with your partner of a lot of years and like, we just tell each other everything. It's like, if this person was in the room with me, would I say it like this? You know, if this person was right here, is this how I would describe it? Would I check in with them first? You know, if I shared this text, if I shared this photo, would I feel comfortable doing that in front of them? And so sometimes that is an anchor point for me of like, if there's even a twinge, if there's even I'm actually not sure, or they might side eye me, then I just check, you know?
I think, yeah. So to go to the kind of thing that I picked out as the core of the question is the idea of general guiding principles. And if I were to think of anything, it's don't do harm.
Well, yeah.
No, I mean, you say, oh, yeah, but that's, I think, the key, right? Is to be conscious about what you're saying and how that might do harm. If there's any like unsureness, that's when you ask a question, a follow-up question of either the person you're potentially telling something to or the person that you're sharing the information of, right? Or both.
Yeah. Is this my story to tell?
Is this my story to tell?
Is a question I ask myself.
That's a good one as well.
Is this my story to tell? Which parts of it are my story to tell? I can tell about, I had a nice time, or I'm feeling close to this person. But you can talk to them about, you know, their experience. I don't want to speak on behalf of them because that also is cleaner too, you know, of just like, I don't want to be messenger and describe someone else's experience, someone else's story, someone else's info because I might get it wrong, or there might be something lost in translation or through telephone, or if I put even like a little bit of a stank on something, then it implies they feel something that actually they don't. You know what I mean? It's like there can be a lot of confusion in a group when someone is describing someone else's inner world or experiences or thoughts. So I think straight from the horse's mouth, is like always better. Where if someone's like, oh, what did they say? What do they think? And I'm like, I think it would probably be better coming straight from them, but definitely ask them. But for me, this is kind of how I'm feeling. This is what I'm thinking. So I think you can't go wrong owning whatever your story is. And of course, if somebody says, yeah, feel free, share this about me, or, oh, I love that person, they can know whatever, then go for it. It really depends on who you're talking to. But to your point, Ashik, of like seeing who's in front of you and the whole not doing harm thing, I think, what are people's sensitivities? If I'm describing something, maybe I can tell them, but do I want to be thoughtful about how I tell them? So if somebody's insecure about, if they're like looking good, or if they're skilled at something, and you want to talk about how much you like somebody, do you really want to go on and on about how good they look or how skilled they are? You know what I mean? It's just like to be sensitive, to be like, I want to say this in a way that still sees the person in front of me and isn't trying to like twist a knife or rub it in, or like, yeah, be insensitive. So there's ways to also share that are thoughtful. Yeah. So I think if there's ever discomfort, you can always ask, but those are some grounding questions I usually leave.
And I think that's the place that I'm going to, is like, if there's ever a moment of pause. Don't barrel past that. Don't ignore it. It's tough because sometimes over disclosure or under disclosure can end up doing a lot of harm unintentionally. And even to the point of, for some people in some circumstances, being irreparable harm, or like hurt feelings that are just can't, come back from. And also, I think more often than not, if everyone's coming in good faith and trying their best to not do harm, to respect people's, stories, not do something that's not theirs, not share something that's not theirs, and mistakes are made, because they will be made, most often it can be moved past, it can be worked past, and then you can not do that in the future, demonstrate trustworthiness moving forward, and repair that, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And apparently you're cute.
You're cute, and I'll talk to you later. Okay.
Next question we have here starts with, I know some people have deal breakers around metas being able to make rules, but I'm already in a situation where it's starting to happen. It didn't necessarily start out that way. There is a newness for all of us involved and some complexity around that, and marriage/nesting and kids. So I think in some cases, priority is very valid, and I have grace and patience to give, but it's unclear if this is indefinite or temporary at this point, that being the rulemaking. I am in love and not wanting to blow anything up, especially if it just takes time to settle or something else can shift, which seems possible. But I'm curious if you have tips for navigating the feelings that come up around someone else making rules for me/my relationship that isn't in my relationship. I feel lost in it and anxious and frustrated by it, even if I understand where it's coming from and why the person I'm seeing is choosing to compromise on it at this moment. What can make sense for them may not make sense for me, and I know long term I have some choices to make about what makes sense for me. But for now, I'm just looking for any tips or tools to navigate my side of the things in my role.
Oh, I am feeling for you. I have been there, and I mean, you said, you spoke to it, that your partner, the person you're seeing, is choosing to compromise. And that's always where I focus first, is like the hinge partner is deciding what rules they agree to. And it's not so simple. Like, obviously you said there's complexity. They're living together. They have children together. There's probably a lot of different pressures weighing on everybody. And your partner is making a choice to say, yes, I will agree to this rule. I don't know how open they are to a brainstorm. So usually whenever there's something like this, I'm like, this rule is creating like a new stressor. It's shrinking me as a way to care for them, and are there other ways to care for them that don't shrink me? So I don't know what the rules are, but there are a lot of different ways to do whatever that's supposed to do. So for example, if the rule is, you can only see this person now once a week instead of 3 times a week, if it was like a time rules are common, because it distresses the meta too much and they don't want to feel that distress. Okay, there's a lot of distress. What are all of the ways that distress can be managed, cared for? Can other things be taken off their plate? Things like that. Like, can there be a brainstorm about what is this rule trying to do? And are there other things also that can do it? And that's where I start with trying to open it up, because is there a solution that can still hopefully meet that need or soothe or comfort whatever is distressing without imposing a restriction on you? For example, how I've seen this play out before a couple of times with different folks. If a married couple has their routine and they're taking care of their kids, and then one of them starts falling for somebody else and starts neglecting their home duties or not picking up their kid on time or forgetting an important thing, about their spouse because they're falling for somebody, the easiest thing to jump to would be the problem is that you're seeing that other person. You should see that other person less. When really the problem is the hinge partner is dropping the ball. And it is very possible to not drop the ball and spend time with someone. The hinge partner's responsibility is often to show that these are not competing. I'm not taking from one to give to the other, because if it looks like that, then the solution winds up being, well, take it back, when really if you can manage both and commit to multiple partnerships, because you're committing to multiple partnerships, and uphold those things, then it demonstrates that this new relationship is not a threat, because nothing is being harmed in our connection by the growth of this, and it's a responsibility that is it's easy to fumble. And of course, I don't know what I'm just describing what I've seen, so if this isn't the case with your partner, then don't worry about it. But that is something that often gets missed when we look at the rule being made by the meta, because it's well, your partner also has a role in whatever that distress is. And is that a solution that the two of them need to sort out?
Well, it's not just that it's the hinge partner has a role in what's creating that, but they also have a role in how they're responding to the request for a rule, right? And I think at the end of the day, I can understand the distress that it sounds like you're feeling in response to this rule being made by a meta, right? And it feels like that's where the distress is coming from. But the reality is, from what I'm reading, you're not having any interaction with this meta. That's not where the distress is coming from. The distress is coming from your relationship with your partner, right? And so that's where the solution is for you for this distress. That's the source of the distress, and that is the place for the solution for the distress, right? There is no enemies, right? It's a team effort, and the solution is to talk to the person who you're on a team with. Thank you so much for your question. Hopefully that was helpful. So next question, very appreciably written in a few sentences. Thank you so much. My partner and I have been polyamorous since we started dating 2 years ago. I tried dating others, but broke agreements early on that damaged my partner's trust in me. I've done a lot of repair work with my partner's therapy for the past 6 months to learn why I broke agreements tied to my extreme anxiety and fawning behaviors, and how to not do so in the future, and took a break from dating during that period. I'm feeling ready to see others now and informed my partner, but he's expressed hesitation and a desire for me to not proceed, not even with seeing an old friends with benefits of mine. It's feeling like a poly for me, but not for the situation, as he has been able to date this entire time. What do I do? Why does it feel like the goalposts keep moving? And I thought we'd built back trust, but apparently not. Thank you so much for your question.
Thank you.
That's a really tough situation. And I can absolutely have empathy for the party, a partner who's had their trust broken in struggling to push past and let go of a safety mechanism that has made them feel safe again. And now this is the first time that that safety net would be getting taken away. So I have empathy for those feelings of fear. And I'm reading what you've said, and I'm hearing a lot of taking ownership, learning through therapy about what trigger points were that created those circumstances, and an explicit desire to not harm again and to try to do things differently.
Well, I think, and I know in my experience, trust in this kind of situation only really gets solidified after taking the leap of faith and trying it again and having it go differently.
Yeah.
Right. So what care and reassurances and treatment of him might he need or want in order to be willing to be like, I'm going to trust that you're going to not, hurt me again. And then it's very much your responsibility to handle that with care. It sounds like you are. And then when it goes better, that's a drop in the bucket. And every time it goes better and goes better and goes better, then you're actually rebuilding trust on that topic.
Yeah.
Right. So you removed the scary thing, the opportunity to hurt him. And now opportunity might happen again. So what's going to happen differently? Can you lay out like how things are going to play out differently and how you can love on him?
Kind of to go off of that, to go back to that idea of like, he had this safety net that made him feel okay, right? You weren't dating other people. I think to ease back into this place where you can then demonstrate trustworthiness, right? Through not doing the same mistakes again, you need to create new safety nets for him.
What would that be though?
I mean, I think that can look like certain types of additional check-ins that maybe you've not done or felt a need to do in the past, certain types of special activities with him so as to show your continued commitment to bringing, attention and love to your relationship together. I think maybe additional safety precautions around sexual safety and stuff like that. Added communication levels. It's also tough because at a certain point, it comes down to what is his underlying fear. So figuring out what those needs are, and what those fears are, so that you can construct new safety nets, so that you can get the opportunity to demonstrate through continued action a new level of trustworthiness.
I mean, maybe this is just me, but I personally, if a partner is saying like, I don't want you to do that, I would hold space for that. I'd want to know why, what you're saying, what are you scared of? I'm not gonna take that as a command personally. Like, I hear you that you don't want me to do that. Let's talk about how I can love on you, what the worry is. But, I don't know. I bristle at the idea of that. At least in the way that you've described it, it sounds like he's the one who has the say, or at least that's like kind of what you're agreeing on. And that could create so much resentment. I'm hearing the tension in your question of just like, what do I do? Poly for you, but not for me. Like, then the attempt to preserve the relationship can now create this new problem of like restriction or control or trying to like keep it small, to hurt the very relationship it was attempting to save. You know what I mean? So I think autonomy is very important. We want to love on each other. We don't want to like, do things at each other and say, you can't tell me what to do and then go off and do whatever you want. Like, rebuilding trust takes care. And I don't think the solution is to never be exposed to risk again if you're agreeing to a polyamorous relationship. We gotta take the leap of faith at some point.
I think just openness, willingness on both parts to see the other, and see the work that you're each doing and see the pain points and the fear that you're each having, and see that you both care about the relationship, right? And approach it as a team, trying to figure out how both parties' needs can be met.
Thank you, everybody, for all of your questions. We're so grateful that we have all of these amazing listeners. You're all wanting to be the best versions of yourself, and that always inspires me. So it's also why I like doing question and answer stuff. So yeah, happy to do this, and I'm also excited about what's coming for the rest of the season. I can't wait to show you these other interviews. But in the meantime, I hope something that we said tonight could be helpful.
I know it was. You're welcome.
Yeah.
But beyond those upcoming episodes, if you're looking for more non-monogamy content, Genevieve, as always, is on TikTok, and Instagram at Chill Polyamory, where she's talking about non-monogamy and all that great stuff. So check it out there. Short form content, you know what it is. If you are looking for more long form content, she's also on YouTube, also at Chill Polyamory, where she's talking about media representations of non-monogamy in film and TV. So go watch those if you like video essays.
If you want to support those projects and this podcast, you can go to patreon.com/chillpolyamory. That is also where I have a library of resources, a couple hundred polyamory and non-monogamy resources. I offer a pen pal service there. I do monthly live chats. There's a lot of ways to stay in touch. I do Q&As like this directly if you want to hang out once a month with me. So that is patreon.com/chillpolyamory.
And for all of our listeners and viewers, this has been I Could Never. And remember that just because you've never done something before doesn't mean that you can't do it. Bye.